Hello, you beautiful humans, and welcome to Love, Sex and Magic with me, Mel Wells. I'm so excited for today's episode. Named by Oprah as a thought leader for the next generation and one of Inc. 500's fastest growing companies, Marie Forleo has created a socially conscious digital empire that inspires millions. She's the star of the award-winning show Marie TV with over 52 million views and host of the Marie Forleo podcast with nearly 12 million downloads. Marie has taught entrepreneurs, artists, and multi-passionate go-getters from all walks of life how to dream big and back it up with daily action to create results. She runs the acclaimed business training program B-School and the writing program The Copy Cure. Her #1 New York Times bestselling book, Everything is Figureoutable, is available now. In this episode, we talk about following your passion, going against the grain, entrepreneurship in the online space, and what it truly means to create a business and a life that you love. So Marie, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so grateful for your time. You have created a digital empire that truly touches the lives of millions around the world. And you really are just this online pioneer in this space of entrepreneurship and coaches and people really changing their lives. It's so clear that you're living your purpose here on this planet. So what I'd love to do first is just really take it back to really early on. What was life like for little Marie? Were there any early signs of entrepreneurship in your childhood growing up?
Well, Mel, thank you so much for that introduction and for having me on today. You know, I think when I was little Marie, one of the things that gave a hint to the woman I would grow into was the fact that every time adults would ask me, Marie, what do you want to be when you grow up? Which they, of course, start doing when you're like 3 or 4 or 5, and it continues all the way through. I never had just 1 or 2 answers, Mel. I had like 17 answers. So anytime an adult would ask me that question, I'm like, how much time do you have? Because I would say, well, I want to be a teacher and a dancer and an artist and a writer. And the list would go on and on. And, you know, throughout the years, some of those designations may have shifted or changed. And, you know, some would slot in like, oh, fashion designer and then animator. And, you know, so different things would get added once I became aware of all of these different cool things you could do in the world. But that was probably one of the first indications. And then I think the second one, my first real job, meaning a job that I was paid for by, someone not in my family, was starting to babysit when I was just 9. So I had these neighbors that were beautiful people, and they had 2 little girls, and they were quite wealthy. And I remember just meeting this family, and the mom just saying, wow, you know, Marie's so mature. Do you think she would want to babysit? And I was like, yeah, of course, I would love to. And so when I was over their house, of course, I would take great care of their kids, but the kids would go to sleep pretty early, like young kids really do. And so I discovered, just taking care of the house, that there was all these other things that I could do as well. So for example, this particular woman, she had a love of like beauty gear and products and makeup. And I was like, Janice, do you want me to maybe go through and like clean all this up and organize it so that when the kids are asleep and there's just more things that can be done? So I was like upselling. And then I remember they also paid me extra to DJ a party that they were having, like watching the kids and then also being in charge of the party vibe and the music. So those were probably some of the indications, but maybe the biggest one was the fact that my dad was a small business owner. So he ran essentially a printing shop, and it was amazing. And, he didn't know he was going to be a small business owner. It's like he was working for a company, and then all of his customers fell in love with him, and they said, you should really go out on your own and do this. And so I remember being a kid, and there were times when my dad had to meet these really big, important deadlines. And he would tell us, the family, like, hey, really need everybody to come on into the shop over the weekend, and we're all going to do this together. And Mel, I think one of the most profound lessons that I learned from my dad and my mom too was that, there are times in life when you have to do a lot of work, right? When you have to kind of get in there, make things happen. It may not be your normal pace. It may be a little bit of a period of intensity. But they taught me a huge lesson, which was this, that you could turn it into a party. So this was the 80s. My mom had like a huge boom box. We would order pizza. So they turned these like work nights and work weekends into a whole family party affair. And it was a really solid lesson in that, you know, when there's times in life when you have to kind of dig in and everyone has to be all hands on deck, and it may not be what you expect, the energy that you bring to that, the emotion you bring to that, how you show up makes all the difference in the world. Rather than complaining like, oh no, we're not going to have a normal weekend, all of a sudden it became something fun. So those are just some of the highlights, I think, from Little Marie days that gave a little bit of a clue to how I would turn out.
I love that. And it's so clear because you bring so much fun to everything you do. It's clear that that fun and joy and play is just infused into every aspect of your business now. So when did the world of life coaching and online business really start to call you? How old were you? And was there like a moment where you realized this is what I'm meant to do with my life?
Yeah. So to put that into a context that I think a lot of people can relate to, when I graduated from school, my job was on Wall Street on the New York Stock Exchange. So literally on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. And that was a great fit for me because I'm a person who has a ton of energy. And the thought of sitting behind a desk for like 8 to 10 hours a day, oh my God, Mel, I was like, please, I could stick a fork in my eye. That did not sound like I could survive. And so I was excited. I was grateful. You know, I'm the first in my family to even go to college. So I was really, really humbled by this incredible opportunity to be where I was. One of the things, you know, at that particular time, we're talking the late 90s now, it was 99.9% men on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. So that was kind of like my first real encountering of some pretty hardcore sexism, to just call it what it is. So that was rough because I was wanting to demonstrate my intelligence and my work ethic, but I kept having to do these battles with doing all this navigating with guys hitting on you and like, oh, and there's a whole culture at that time. Maybe not everyone, but my particular personal experience, you know, the bell kind of rings at 4 p.m. People are going to strip clubs, doing cocaine. It was like, you know, it's a complete culture shift. And I'm like, what is this? And for the first 6 months in that job, I tried really, really hard to put my game face on and to show up and do the best job that I could because I didn't have a trust fund, no backup plan. Again, I was trying to do what I thought I was supposed to do in order to be a success. But here's what the first clue was. There's this little small voice inside of me, Mel, that kept saying, Marie, this isn't who you are. This isn't what you're meant to do. This isn't who you're supposed to be in the world. And initially I was like, shh. I can't hear that right now. Like I got work to do. I got to, you know, show up and do my best and like become a success and all this stuff. And over the months, that voice kept getting louder and louder until one day I showed up at work and I didn't feel good physically at all. It was like I started feeling dizzy. I had a headache. I had trouble breathing. And I said to my boss at the time, I said, hey, is it okay if I go out and just grab a coffee for 5 minutes? He's like, absolutely. So I ran off of the floor and rather than going to get a coffee, I made a beeline to the nearest church. So I was raised Catholic. I went to a Catholic university. So I was kind of trained in a crisis to look up for a little bit of guidance, just a little bit of help. And I remember sitting on the church steps, Trinity Church. Mel, I was crying the ugly cry, like where snot bubbles are coming out of your nose. You know that cry where you're just feeling so terrible and so lost. And I just felt like the biggest loser because I'm like, I cannot stand this job. And yet I don't take it for granted. I don't have a trust fund. I don't want to bring shame upon my parents. And the first clue I got, the first bit of guidance was call your dad. So I took out my flip phone, which is what we had at those times. And I called my dad and I was crying and I was just, you know, just rambling about how bad I felt. And I didn't want him to be ashamed of me. And I'm so sorry. And when I was taking a breath, he broke in and he's like, Ray, stop. You're fine. He's like, look, you got to hear this. This is like the big secret to life. You're going to be working for the next 40, 50 years. You have got to find something you love. clearly this job isn't it. And if it's making you this sick, then you need to quit. He's like, you've worked forever. I'm not worried about you figuring out how to put food on the table and keep a roof over your head. You'll figure that out. He goes, but if this job is making you this sick, you need to go out and you need to find something that you love, because once you do, you're never going to feel like you work a day in your life again. Trust me on this. And it was like something in my body settled. And even though I didn't know how to find something I love to do, I could feel the truth in his words. And so I gave my notice, and then I went on a bit of an odyssey, and I was trying to figure out how to merge all the parts of myself, because I've always been passionate about business and commerce, and my dad was a small business owner, but I've also been really, really creative. For most of my young life, I actually thought I was going to be a fine artist. So I love to draw. I love painting. I love all of that. So I figured out, I was like, well, there is one world that kind of combines commerce and creativity. And I thought of magazine publishing, specifically women's magazines. And I hustled and I got a temp position under Condé Nast Publications, specifically Gourmet Magazine. Food magazine. I was like, this is great. This is exciting. That particular world is actually skewed a lot more gender balanced, and or there's a lot more executive females in that particular industry. I was like, okay, this is awesome. A whole new vibe, whole new world. This is going to be great. So 6 months into that job, I started hearing the same voices again. Mel, Marie, this isn't who you are. This isn't what you're meant to do. This isn't who you're supposed to be. And I was like, not again. I felt like, oh my goodness. It felt like Groundhog's Day. Like, how is this happening to me? I'm a hard worker. I don't get it. This time I took a step back though, and I tried to gain a little bit of an objective perspective. And I thought to myself, okay, I've been in this ad sales job for about 6 months. I really like my boss. I appreciate my boss, but I don't aspire to become her. And the publisher of the magazine at that particular time was also a woman who I admired. She was great. I respected her, but I didn't want her job. And I thought that was a good clue. I was like, well, if I don't want to climb this corporate ladder, what am I doing wasting their time and mine? So I thought, okay, maybe I'm still a little too skewed on the business side of things. Maybe I've been starving my creativity. So I thought maybe I should be on the editorial side of magazine publishing. You know, there's designers, there's fashion shows, there's like all of this different vibe. It's not so much heavily skewed towards numbers and, you know, meeting quotas and all that stuff. So I went to HR and I said, the next time you guys have an editorial position in any magazine, I'll take it. I don't care if I have to take a pay cut, I'm in. Couple months went by and they gave me a job as a fashion assistant at Mademoiselle magazine. And I was like, okay, this has got to be it. I was excited. The people I worked with were great. I was starting to go to fashion shows. I was working with new product designers. It was awesome. Fast forward a couple months. What do you think happened? Same thing, Mel. This little voice inside kept going again. This isn't who you are. This isn't what you're meant to do. This isn't what you're supposed to be in the world. And at that point, I felt broken. I said, do I have some kind of cognitive challenge? I'm a really hard worker. I really want to make a difference. And yet I can't seem to hold down any job for longer than 6 months because I want to quit because it feels like I'm dying a slow death. So cut to, I'm on the internet one day, probably when I shouldn't have been, and I stumbled upon a new profession at the time called coaching. Again, 1999, for context, how long ago this was. No one had ever heard of it, but I read this article about this new profession where all you're doing is strategizing with people and helping them find solutions. And it just, the more I read about this new profession, the more something inside my heart lit up like a Christmas tree. Simultaneously, two things happened. I was like, the angels parted, you know, the clouds parted and angels appeared. And it was like, oh, like this is what you're meant to do. And the logical part of my mind was like, Marie, this is crazy. You're only 23 years old. You're in serious debt. You can't seem to hold down a job. And what the hell is life coaching? It sounds like the cheesiest thing ever. This is just going to be one more thing you fail at. So I had all the fearful voices in my head, but I had the soul and body knowing that there was something in this for me. So I signed up for a coach training program. At that time, it was a 3-year program. It was all done virtually, which was ahead of its time. And a few months down the road, I get a call from the HR department. There was a promotion for me at Vogue. this was my big fork in the road. Do you stay on the corporate path with a steady paycheck, a job that people can actually understand? It's very respectable, it's dependable. Or do you quit and do this weird life coaching thing that no one's ever heard of? You have no experience in, you have no money, you're already in debt. It sounds just bonkers. Of course, I chose the bonkers path. I gave my notice. I went back to doing what I did to help put me through college, which was bartending and waiting tables. And that was over 20 years ago.
Wow, absolutely incredible. And I think so many people are going to be able to relate to hearing that little voice that's just like, no, this is not you, this is not you, and feeling like there's something wrong with them because of that. And I feel like every entrepreneur who's, started and growing their business that is truly making a difference and helping others in the world has chosen the path that's less traveled, has chosen the path that didn't make the most sense, wasn't necessarily didn't have the roadmap necessarily laid out for them, but has taken a leap. And in my experience, it's taking that leap that just always, always pays off. And I also love that you shared about the piece about having a supportive family, having your dad say, it's okay for you to choose something that lights you up. You don't have to go down this path that's causing you to be miserable. I personally had a really similar experience in my childhood where I saw my mum and my dad both running small businesses from home and really being able to do what they loved at home so they could still spend time with me and my brother. And my mum used to run this almost like a membership, but it wasn't online, it was in person. And her passion is looking after kids and children's education. And so she would write up these worksheets and workbooks for the kids during summer holidays, and she would mail them to all these kids around the city. And I got to help her when I was only a toddler, and I got so much joy out of being a part of that world. And it really taught me, you don't have to go to the office every day and work for someone else. You can help other people and still spend time with your family. And that was definitely one of the biggest drivers for me in starting my business. So, Marie, you coined the term multi-passionate, which I just love and I relate to so much. I really resonate with that as a multi-passionate person, just like yourself. But you've also really been so good at nailing down on one main thing in your business, your epic program, B School. So how has someone as multi-passionate as you are been able to focus so much year after year after year on this one thing? And do you have any advice for other multi-passionate entrepreneurs or budding entrepreneurs out there who want to just do it all?
Yes. Well, first of all, I think that as a multi-passionate entrepreneur, there's always going to be a lot of things that you're very interested in. There's probably a lot of things that you're gifted at. There's a lot of things that you have to offer to this world in terms of making a difference. And, in the earlier part of my journey, after I discovered coaching and after I started my training, I started my business, one of the big realizations was that I actually never felt comfortable just calling myself a coach. It felt too narrow and too limiting. I was extremely passionate about dance and fitness, specifically hip hop. I was also really passionate about spirituality and writing and what was then a very nascent world of digital marketing. I was advertising, I was writing an email newsletter before those things were even popular, all of these different things. And so one of the things that I recognized within myself that trying to artificially narrow my scope, especially in the beginning, was going to be a recipe for disaster. I had read every success book out there. I had read all of the different career books, like What Color is Your Parachute? And so many different books and wise people would say, okay, you've got to pick one thing. You've got to narrow in. Even my coach training, which was fantastic, was like, okay, are you a productivity coach? Are you a relationship coach? Are you a career coach? And I just remember feeling like anytime I would try and adhere to that advice, it was like I was cutting off a limb. And it wasn't until that phrase came name to me, multi-passionate entrepreneur, that I felt myself expand, and that I felt myself finally giving me a new context to be the biggest, fullest, most multifaceted version of me that I actually was. And it was like, I am too big for these conventional definitions. I do not fit into these boxes that everyone wants to put me in. So for the next few years of my career, especially when I was starting out, I said, you know what? I'm not calling myself a life coach, and I'm not only going to focus on that. I simultaneously developed an amazing career in dance and fitness, and that's a whole other story. But what I learned during this time was that at that particular stage and season of my life, I didn't have a mortgage or a family or anything like that. So I was very conscious of the fact that if I split my focus and I pursue multiple passions at once, I may not make as much money, and that's okay. And B, my progress in all of the different zones is probably going to be slower because I'm splitting my time and focus. So I went into this eyes wide open, and I recognized that by choosing to pursue multiple passions at once and keeping a bunch of plates spinning in the air, that I had to dial back my expectations in terms of external rewards or recognition. But I was doing that knowingly that my soul was going to be so much happier if I gave myself permission to experience the things that I felt were important for not only my professional development, but also my soul's development. These were things that I really wanted to explore and experience, and I never gave myself permission to as a younger person or even in college. So there was about 7 years, Mel, that I was doing the bartending, the coaching, the dance, the fitness. I was a Nike athlete. I was creating dance fitness videos. I was doing so many different things. And so I did that for so long. And then I reached a new point where I was really looking at my life. My relationship with Josh, who now I think we're going to be together almost 18 years, was probably just a year or two in. And I felt myself feeling I was ready for my next evolution. And I said, okay, what do I envision for my future? What is most important to me? And I didn't want to be scattered anymore. I'd kind of done that. And when I looked ahead at the future, I said, okay, if I try on a future in health and fitness and dance, what does that look like? What does that look like at age 40 or 50 or 60? Like using my body as the sole source of revenue. Or if it was in fitness, potentially having to come up with some type of apparatus or a product, like taking it back old school, like a Thigh Master or something like that. Like that was going to be a vehicle towards wealth. And I was like, it didn't feel right when I tried that on. And then when I thought about the possibility of my entire career being focused on helping people with ideas and creating training and programs and speaking and writing books, I could see myself doing that into my 70s, 80s, 90s. Like there's something in my body that was just like, yes. Plus the virtual nature of it, the fact that I'm someone who loves freedom, that's probably one of my highest values. And I knew because of my experience and what I was building, I was like, I can do this from anywhere in the world. I can reach people all over the world. I don't have to be landlocked, which at that time, again, we're taking it back now to the early 2000s, mid 2000s, like the aughts, 2007, 2008. Where, there was fitness videos, but we didn't have online apps. Like none of that stuff existed yet. So I made a choice then to go all in with my online business and coaching. And that's when I really just started to understand on a deeper level how many brilliant entrepreneurs, many of them women, who had ideas that they wanted to bring to life, had products or services that they wanted to get out into the world. They wanted to create something meaningful and profitable, but they weren't yet skilled. They didn't have the capabilities around marketing and sales. And when I would have these conversations with women, especially because of my fitness journey and being in New York City, and I had a book out already. So I was constantly talking with women and in conversation with them. They'd often say something like this, Mel, like, I'm the idea person. Like I have this great idea for something, but I want someone else to handle the business side. Or, marketing and sales, like that's so negative. It's so aggressive. It's so pushy. I don't want to be a used car salesman. And Mel, I would want to take them and lovingly shake the crap out of them because I was like, no, like marketing and sales, first of all, is the lifeblood of any sustainable business. But more importantly, what these women weren't understanding was that there was a new style of marketing, something I like to call modern marketing, where the best of your humanity comes out when you're practicing this, not the worst. And when I say the best, specifically, I mean your empathy, your compassion, your creativity, your sense of being generous, wanting to be of service, like all of the best parts of you when you're practicing how I teach modern marketing, you actually become a better you, not a worse you. Plus, it really is the secret to having your business not just be able to survive, but thrive no matter what's happening in the world. And after being in business for 20 years now, it's like, I'm not just saying this out of theory, I live this through practice.
So incredible. And I completely contest to what you're saying. I think the way that you teach people to sell goes against all of the old stories that people have from years and years of, oh, selling is bad. I don't want to be sold to and I don't want to sell. It feels icky. Yes. And, you openly say, I love marketing and you help other people learn to love marketing. And I truly love marketing what I sell now, my products and my services, because I genuinely love what I'm offering. And so why would I not want to share that? But there's such a way that it can be done in such an authentic and loving way, as you say.
Super elegant, and it's not pushy. It's not aggressive. It's in a place of service. And it's also in a way where when you think about it, I often think about this in my life, all of us have challenges. All of us have stress points. All of us have problems. And whenever you found a solution in your life, whether it's something with your home or something with your health or something with your personal development or something with your business, aren't you so grateful? You're like, thank goodness this person created this thing, whatever this thing is. And when someone delivers that to you in a way that really honors your humanity, that really serves what it is your pain point, and then takes you higher, you're happy to do business. Like you're like, oh my goodness, thank goodness I found you. That's the feeling, that's the emotion, that's the connection that we have the opportunity to create if we're willing to develop the skill set to be able to do that. And this is, again, not the kind of thing that we're taught in school. We have also had, just for a moment, we've had many people who have PhDs and MBAs go through B school and say, oh my goodness, what you're teaching me is actually more actionable, more applicable, more aligned with my values than anything that I spent, hundreds of thousands of dollars on these degrees to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. So is it your 12th year running B School this year?
Yes.
Wow, that is incredible. Huge congratulations. Just wow. I would love to know, what are the biggest differences you see now in the online space compared to when you first started running B School? Because obviously things are just accelerating and changing at such a pace. What do you see that's been the biggest shift?
A couple of them. I think initially when I first started, people were still like, gosh, is online business really a thing? So it initially started with people feeling very uncomfortable with the technology. Social media was still in its early days, so people were trying to figure that piece of it out. I think now, probably one of the biggest challenges, and I think this is why I get so excited about B School, folks are so inundated with so much information. They are so inundated with all of these things, but people say I should do this and that, and they're just overwhelmed. They have no idea where to start. There's a million different quote unquote strategies that they can or should be doing, but what they haven't done is the foundational work to understand you don't need to do 10 million things to be successful. In fact, that's often a recipe for overwhelm, failure, and burnout. You only need to do a handful of things. You need to decide the strategy that works for you, that's built on solid, timeless principles. And then you need to be able to execute and tune out the noise. So many people are kind of reading things online about how to make their online business work, and it's very surface level. So they think that they can just kind of latch onto a tactic, or do this one thing that someone they saw on Instagram do, or run this particular ad. But it's almost like trying to build a sustainable, profitable business on a house of cards. It has no foundation. And I think the other thing is just the sheer overwhelm of information out there and how scattered people feel. I think social can be amazing and it's a wonderful tool, but you cannot build your business on property you don't own. And that's what a lot of people are just doing right now in terms of putting all of their eggs into, whether it's TikTok or Instagram or any social channel, it really doesn't matter. not understanding that you don't own your connection with your customers on those platforms. The platform does. And if they, not even if, it's when, they change their algorithms, they change their terms of service, or that platform takes a turn in any direction, your entire business becomes vulnerable and you put your livelihood at risk. And it doesn't have to be that way. And so I think that we went from people not understanding how to use the online tools and being very unfamiliar with them to just this sheer overwhelm and paralyzation that people feel of what should I be doing? I have no idea where to start. And then just trying to do too much at once and putting too much emphasis on platforms that they don't own.
So true. So with that in mind, if you were going to start a new business now from scratch, or you were going to start your business again from scratch, what would you focus on and what would you not focus on?
Well, when it comes to starting a new business from scratch, I think one of the biggest things that you need to identify first is the who. Who is your business serving? So who are your ideal customers? Because it's not everyone. So if I were starting a business from scratch today, I would get very, very clear on the ideal customers for that particular business. And like we do in B School, like a full ideal customer avatar and go through that so many times. Then I would really identify where are the places that my ideal customers are already spending time? Where are they already invested? Who are the people that already have relationships with these humans? And then I would go and develop those partnerships, those relationships, and do my best work to get whatever my offer is, or a portion of that offer, some kind of free value, some type of awareness campaign in front of those people. I would build an email list and I would do everything that we talk about in B School. And then when it comes to social, I wouldn't try, and I still stay to this day. I think people make a mistake trying to be everywhere at once. One of the mantras I live my life by is simplify to amplify. I would much rather see someone choose a platform, A, where their ideal customer is already spending time, or many of them are, and B, where they can execute from a content marketing strategy on such a high level. And I don't mean high level in terms of expensive or highly produced. I mean high level in terms of the quality of your content, which especially right now in 2021 often can look like things that are just shot on your iPhone. It doesn't have to be overly produced. Things that are very lo-fi do very well. But rather than being on 5 platforms and trying to post often, why not pick one and just dominate it with so much love, with so much authenticity, with so much connection, that then once you have that momentum and you have those revenues and those profits, if you then want to expand out and add on another platform or another channel, you would have both the resources financially, and you would have the inner focus, muscle, and momentum to be able to execute and keep it going.
Love that. So helpful. Love simplify to amplify. So now I would love to hear more about how do you structure your week? You have this huge company, massive virtual team in so many different parts of the world. How do you organize your life? What does a week look like in the life of Marie Forleo?
It's very fluid. And I think one of the things, just like how we talked about this notion of being multi-passionate, where it's not conventional, I tend not to be a conventional person when it comes to scheduling either. So this might sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but I'm going to try and give enough color and tone and examples to it so you can feel into how that might look for you. So for me, I cannot do the same thing every single day, 7 days a week, 365 a year, and expect this whole being to feel charged and energized and joyful. That's too much monotony for me. And at the same time, I recognize the value of scheduling and I recognize the value of planning, but I use those very intuitively. And here's what I mean by that. Late last year, I discovered it was pretty much a big surprise that I had quite a big tumor growing outside of my uterus, like the size of a grapefruit. By the way, I'm fine. I had a surgery. I'm all good. But it was one of these unexpected things that through the next 2 to 3 months of my life, completely off of the quote unquote plan. I'm sure many people can relate to this, given the year we've had, right? This need to be flexible, this need to be adaptable. This is like something we're all learning to strengthen. And so, my days and weeks over the past, I would say 2 months have looked very different than usual, but I'm actually feeling more productive and creative than ever. So oftentimes the morning is dedicated to meditation, it's dedicated to working out, it's dedicated to writing, but it's not like there is this strict ritual that has to happen the same every morning. I also pay, Mel, really good attention to my health and how my body is feeling. So getting a full 8 hours sleep for me, crucial, right? So I am not going to do anything to disrupt this vessel because this is my most important asset in this life. This is the vessel through which all of my contributions happen. It's where my joy comes from. It's where everything pours through this. So I'm not going to adhere to, oh, I have to wake up every single day at 5 a.m. sharp if the night before I'm having a joyful time with friends and I'm up a little too late to make that happen. Does that make sense? So I'm also looking at the week in a very holistic way to make sure that there's time slotted in for connection and creativity and, safely seeing friends. Then there's time slotted in for open time. Then there's time slotted in for creating what's next in terms of our business and career. So it's pretty fluid. And it's actually a topic in terms of time and getting things done that I've been really, really passionate about. And I think that's probably going to be the area that I dive into next in terms of a training and a whole experience that I want to put forth, because I think that most of us have inherited some destructive ideas when it comes to time and productivity that are not in alignment with joy, our health, sustainability, and also feeling good while we do it. So I don't know if that gave enough of you can feel free to ask me more details. I'd be happy to share, but my weeks look very different, and I use scheduling and calendaring to make sure that the most important things get done, but I don't stuff my calendar to the point where I feel exhausted.
I think that's so important for people to hear, especially from someone as successful as you, that you've really got your priorities in order with your health, taking care of your body, making sure that you feel nourished and taken care of, not just kind of this old paradigm of hustle and, so many coffees and staying up all night working on your thing. I think that's so old now. It's so outdated. And I'm so excited to hear that this is something that you're going to be sharing more of, because I think it's so important and so needed.
I mean, time is our most valuable currency in life. We can get more money. We can make more money. We can create more love. There's so many things that are renewable, and time, while it's very expansive, and while I do believe people have enough, it is also in a paradoxical way that one thing that in some ways we can't get more of. You know what I mean? Where we have this space and this time in this particular life, in this particular incarnation. And so how do we use it intentionally? How do we use it joyfully? How do we use it in a way where we're both honoring our gifts and our contribution, but we're also fueling aliveness and energy and fun and play and joy as well? And I think those two things can exist. And I don't think we've spent nearly enough time as a culture speaking into perhaps a new way of doing things that isn't a part of toxic 24/7 work until your eyeballs fall out and then you die culture.
Yeah, because we've been kind of hearing, oh, time is the most valuable asset, and we've been interpreting that as so cram as much in as possible into these 24 hours, and that is not the deal.
No, it's not the deal. And from what I'm listening, I've been asking a lot of questions because I love listening to hear their experience and their words and their feelings and their pain points and their dreams and aspirations. And what I'm discovering, Mel, is actually quite cool. Around so many, specifically women, do not prescribe, feel aligned, feel attracted to this notion of like trying to cram more in, even though they also hear those voices where they feel guilty if they're taking a rest. They feel a sense of shame if they need to just chill out for a little bit, because there's this voice in their head that's really a societal voice saying, but you're not doing enough, but you're still not doing enough, and you should be using this time more effectively. And so I think we really need to dismantle some of that toxicity that's up there in terms of our internal dialogue, and take a firm stand for no, life is meant to be enjoyed. And there's a lot of science behind, excuse me, around the value of rest and just the value of understanding seasonal in terms of you may have a week or two where, yeah, there's an intensity to it, but it's almost like a workout, right? Where if you did high intensity workouts every single day of the week, you would crush your body. You need to modulate. You need to be able to push, and then you need to pull back. And then you need to be able to go a little more intense, and then you need to rest. And I think as a culture, especially with technology, so many of us think that we should operate like our tech, which is kind of built to be on 24/7. Humans are not. And I think as women, we really need to lead the way and provide new examples for ourselves and others in how to live this life that's a lot more full of joy. It's more loving, and it's a lot more sustainable.
So true. And I personally feel the most inspired. I get the most ideas and creativity come to me when I'm giving myself plenty of time to rest and recharge and do things in life that, have nothing to do with my business, and just make time for that pleasure. That's when I get the downloads come in, So I'd love to do a little quick fire that I ask all of my guests that come on to Love, Sex, and Magic. And the first one is, what is something that you right now are loving?
Okay, there's three things, because I love a lot of things. So one, puzzling, doing puzzles. So I'm here in New York. It's very, very cold right now. That's why I have a sweater on and a jumpsuit, and just sitting by the fire with Josh and doing like these beautiful big puzzles together, something I'm totally loving. Second, cooking, like getting into new recipes and cooking new recipes and trying new things with food, absolutely loving. Then the third thing is, because we're spending so much time at home, because of my history in art, I love fine art, I love design. And right now I am in this process of beautifying every part of my space, of looking at things that I'm like, oh my goodness, I've had this for so long. It's totally in fine shape, but it's ready to be donated. And there's open space to kind of make more visual and sensual beauty around me in terms of my home. Those would be the three things.
Oh, love all of those. What is something that turns you on?
What turns me on, I would say from like a sensual, energy charged kind of place, is when Josh, I'm an acts of service in terms of love language person. So when he comes up and his strong, very sexy self, even if it's like with a cup of coffee or taking care of things and just kind of taking charge and making everything how he feels it should be, there's a turn on in me for that.
Love that. And when was the last time you experienced magic?
Oh my goodness. I would have to say just last week, after I went through my health challenge, which again, I'm grateful for. It was a super, super gift. But a friend of mine got me a reading with someone that he's worked with who is a medium. And there was such magic in this particular call. And it was so enlivening, and it was so connected to a lot of things that I was kind of thinking about or feeling intuitively, but that came and felt affirmed and solidified and expanded upon. And that I just felt the cells in my body opening up and saying, yes. So it felt like the magic of kind of life and the wisdom of life and how it unfolds. And then having the magic of friends being able to see you and then add in like resources or new friends to amplify and kind of open up even new vistas. It felt magical. And that was just last week.
Oh, that's so special. Well, so I was in the B School class of 2014. I can honestly say it changed the complete trajectory of my life and business. When I first came across you, Marie, and B School, I had a Facebook page and a blog, and that was it. And I had really, really no idea how to run an online business, like no training, no clue really. And so I'm so eternally grateful to you and the entire B School community, and some of the women that I met through B School I'm still really close friends with today. And so I really want to pay this forward. So For our listeners, I'm gifting someone a spot in B School in the class of 2021. That means that I'm going to personally pay for your B School tuition to get your online business off the ground. So if you're dreaming of starting or growing your online business and you've been loving this episode and you just know B School is right for you, maybe you've had your eye on Marie and B School for years and years, then I want to pay this forward to you. So all you need to do is share this podcast on your Instagram feed, put in the caption what winning this gift would mean to you. Make sure to tag me so I see it, and I'll be picking the winner on February the 1st. So Marie, just wanted to say thank you again for everything that you are, everything that you do, everything that you bring to the world.
Oh, Mel, I want to thank you. I want to thank your listeners for being here with us today, but I just want to acknowledge you. You know, when we were getting ready for this interview, I got a chance to see like your most updated website and everything you're doing. And you are such a beautiful, shining example of powerful leadership and what you are creating, what you're offering. It is so needed. And I am just so grateful that you reached out and said, hey, can we have this conversation? Because this is so exciting for me. And, you know, I think just this shared notion that there are other ways to experience life that may not be a part of the mainstream of what our culture has told us has to be. And, you know, of course, effort is awesome. We like, you know, hard work in a certain respect, but it's not about drilling ourselves into the ground. And there's a whole other way of being and creating and loving and connecting that's quite nourishing. And you are such a beautiful example of that. So I just want to acknowledge you and just congratulate you on what you've built and what you've created, because it's a reflection of your soul and it's having such a powerful impact on people around you.
Oh, Marie, that means so much to me. Thank you so, so much. So B School is currently open for class of 2021. Where can everyone go to find out more about you, more about B School, and sign up?
Absolutely. So marieforleobschool.com is the place if you want to access. We have great free training up right now. You can learn more about the program. You can see case studies, which are so inspiring. Even if B School's not right for you, hopefully that'll get you really charged for your dreams and to see new possibilities. marieforleo.com. We've got hundreds of free episodes of Marie TV and the Marie Forleo podcast to keep you motivated and inspired. And if you want to say hi on Instagram, I'm at Marie Forleo.
Thank you so much, Marie.
Thank you.
So if B School is calling you and you would love to win the chance to do B School this year with Marie, I am running this competition to pay for one person from my community's B School tuition. Remember, what you need to do is share this podcast on your Instagram feed. Make sure you write in the caption why you want to win this tuition, and make sure that you tag me in the post so I can see your entry, and I will pick our winner on the 1st of February. I really hope that you got a lot from this episode and it's really inspired you to build your business dreams. See you next time, everyone.